Welcome to Le Grande Bouffe.
The big feast.
For SHOCKTOBER!
Whoa, you're clipping there, Cole.
Sorry.
I think it's fine. I want people to jump in their cars.
Boo.
How's your Shocktober been so far?
Well, it's good. We've seen it. I've seen a couple of horror movies, I'm happy to say, and there's more on the way, so I'm very excited. There's movies that we're not going to be able to do, I fear, during Shocktober. We'll have to save them for next Shocktober.
Oh my.
But there is at least one that I think we're not going to be able to do that I wish we could do.
For reasons of just acquiring for viewing.
Yeah, because I want to see it. I want to watch it again. And you would have liked it better than Psycho 2, which is the movie that we're doing this week, which I insisted on. And I already know, even though Mike and I haven't really talked about it at all, I know that Mike did not like it.
It's fun. It's camp. It's a good old-fashioned commercial sequel. You know, it's a Jaws 2. It's a Driving Miss Daisy 2.
I think it's a little better than that. I think the editing could be a lot tighter. I feel like the movie is really loosely edited, but it's Anthony Perkins.
It's a good 2 hours. That's one thing I noticed.
Yeah,
is that
yeah.
it's not a 90-minute in and out.
No. The camera languishes a bit much on the house and the hotel and stuff, but I love returning to the Bates Motel. You know, part of this is you have to remember that this was the first return to Psycho,
right?
You know, when this
20 years out
when this movie came out, and it was Anthony Perkins reprising the role, and Anthony Perkins is amazing in this movie. I know that
I'll go with that.
I know that this movie is terribly flawed in several ways. There's a few plot holes, and some characters don't act consistently. But I really love Anthony Perkins, and I really love Meg Tilly. And we're going to talk about Meg Tilly. But what I love about Meg Tilly in this movie, she's got that cute little haircut. I don't know where she got that little haircut, but that little haircut is sexy. And
how old is she playing?
I think she's playing early 20s.
She looks younger than she's playing. Her life situation makes her sound, like 19, 20, but she looks 15. She looks like Jodie Foster in Taxi Driver.
And I love she does have a nubility to which you are referring.
Nubility, boy.
But what I like is how she plays Norman. We're going to get into the plot. We're going to talk about the beer in 1 second. Stone Vengeful Spirit IPA, which I chose. We'll talk about that in just a second. But I love how she wraps him around her finger in this coquettish way. She's a perfect coquette. Mm-hmm. But it's very clear that nothing's going to happen. It's not sexual. She's not coming on to him. But she's so friendly. She's more friendly than she should be, obviously, because she's working for her mom, who wants to entrap Norman. And we're giving his plot spoilers away, but the Meg Tilly character dresses up like Norman's mom when he returns home from prison, so he sees her up in the window, and take it from there.
This isn't a good movie, but Anthony Perkins as Norman Bates, Meg Tilly as Mary, really had to do a lot with not tons, and I think Meg Tilly really is doing an interesting job for a very young actress at playing someone who's giving off a certain type of who's pretending to have a certain type of relationship but is lying, and the audience either knows that or doesn't know it, and you have to play it with some dramatic irony to the other characters or keep it from the audience, and she does a good job at it, and it's well done compared to, could be a lot schlockier without her pulling through. I think she's maybe the strongest part.
Okay, so we're going to talk about the beer, the Stone Vengeful Spirit IPA, which is new. I saw it on Twitter. Somebody mentioned it on Twitter. Is that how you say it? Twitter?
Yeah, that's an affirmative there. Twitter.
Twitter. It's like tete. 7.3.
That's also how you say that.
Thank you for that confirmation.
Yeah.
I was pretty sure. You want to, because you don't want to use the wrong vernacular when you're in an intimate context. If you were,
When you're
If-
asking
if-
for
you know-
tite pics on the DM on Twitter, you gotta use the right vernacular.
the beer is 7.3, and
Oh, buddy.
and that's perhaps why we're already a little tipsy. Okay, so I'm just going to read from the can because somebody went to all the trouble to write this, and even though the font is at least 2 font points
but
too
just
small.
make sure I got it. It's Stone is the brewery.
Stone, yeah.
And this is
Vengeful Spirit IPA, a tropically inspired IPA. We've often been inspired to brew beers on a theme. In 2007, it was black IPAs. 2008 saw Belgian-influenced IPAs. And more than once, it's been triple IPAs. It's been fun to dive deep, and you've ridden these waves right along with us. But like you, we also crave new breaks. Okay, so let's get down to business here. What's going on with this beer? Employing a bit of tropical mythology to pay homage to our ever-present gargoyle. Since 1990, the gargoyle, Mike,
go. Yeah.
I think that you and I have both chosen Stone beers for our recording session tonight.
We'll get to that next week, but yeah, they're
That's
definitely gargoyle themed, right? Is mine Stone Brewery?
Yeah.
Oh, funny.
Yeah, I'm just realizing.
Well, it is Shocktober, and they're a rather ghoulish brewery branding wise.
Vengeful spirits can be awesome when they're on your side.
Ooh.
All right, so let's get back into Psycho 2. So our Norman has been released after 20 years in serving his time. He's had the same shrink, and he has proven that he is cured.
Is that Robert Loggia?
Yes, Robert Loge is great.
He's not in the original, right? Is he?
No,
No.
Martin Balsam is the guy who
Robert Loggia's there portraying the psychiatric industry in a universe where the justice system gives all the breaks to the mentally ill.
That's right.
And is very confident that he is officially rubber-stamped cure after...
You know what I love? I love as soon as he walks him up to the doorstep after Norman has already said, I just saw my mom in the window.
Yeah, his mom, who he, to remind everyone, dug up from her grave,
Yeah.
kept her in the house,
Taxidermied her.
taxidermy, yeah, mummified her basically,
That's right.
dressed up as her, and murdered young women in their motel.
That's right.
And
Thank you, Ed Gein.
his first, it's definitely a Gein reference. He was,
And did you catch the Hitchcock profile early in the movie over in the right when they walk in when they first walk in the mom's room? There's the silhouette, the classic silhouette of Hitchcock, because Hitchcock always included himself in his films. So I like how they open the movie with the shower sequence, of which there's a new documentary which is just about the shower sequence. So I love that
so many people, like my mother, who saw it accidentally when she was supposed to be asleep, and her parents were on a date to a drive-in, and I think they gave the kids a little bit of schnapps so they'd go to sleep, and Mom woke up right in that scene. And I feel like everyone that age has that story of seeing that movie too early.
Yeah. My dad warned me of it severely before I saw it. So I was probably 11 or 12 when I saw it.
Do you know of that scene as being not only a very terrifying scene, but one that was very titillating to people?
Oh,
It was
yeah.
like one of the one of the most extended nude scenes at the time.
There's nudity. There is nudity.
Yeah, I was watching that scene carefully because I haven't seen it for maybe like a decade, and yeah, I guess you do see some obscured, out of focused,
Tite.
as you say. There's some breasts in it, and it says a lot about our psyche that they're also being stabbed into. It's kind of a goofy sequence from a modern point of view. It it's certainly not shot as it would be now. There's not real, as you can imagine, there's a lot less blood than there should be, and you don't really see like knife going into body, which maybe leads to the imagination, but you also feel like he was fighting with sensors looking back.
Yeah, there's a documentary. It's called 7852, and it's all about the 78 shots and the 52 cuts of the shower scene. And they interview a bunch of people for it. So yeah, it sounds like an interesting premise for a documentary. Anyway, so I give props to the movie for doing their Hitchcock homage at the very beginning to set it up. And I think it's interesting because we're talking about the shower scene. I think that the silhouette of the character that you can barely see through the shower curtain, that's horrifying. Are you
talking about the
shower
mother
sequence.
silhouette?
Yeah, with him dressed up like the mother,
right?
And you see that silhouette through the shower curtain. Just everybody knows that feeling of being alone. You're in your apartment. You're alone. You're in the shower. The door is open to the bathroom, and you can just imagine seeing the silhouette of this strangely shaped. And he's obviously strangely shaped because it's a man dressed as a woman. So it has.
Well, it's not just any man. Like he's not someone who would be your.
No, it is not just any man.
It's Anthony freaking Perkins, who's I didn't realize is just tall as fuck. Like he's just like kind of a
gawky.
Yeah, he's a real
skinny.
Jimmy Stewart.
So skinny. He's incredibly skinny.
Yeah.
And he's always talking about eating cheese toast.
Oh my god! I wanted to take a screenshot of that scene. He's having like his sort of most tender moment with Mary is he's curled up with her, and it's kind of an interesting scene because she's maybe a third his age, and he's curled up as if he is with his mother, and he tells her that she smells good, and you're really expecting, and you think thematically like what he would say is, "You smell like." Mother. But instead he says, you smell like toasted cheese sandwiches.
Yeah.
Not grilled cheese, toasted cheese sandwiches, which she brought me when I was sick.
Yeah.
Which is not, to my knowledge, a reference to anything.
No, I think it's well, here's another thing that I really like about this movie is that you have this empathy with Norman.
Oh, he's the main character.
Which is
not the plot of the first movie.
Not at all.
He's
not at all.
He's a background character because you're not supposed to suspect him.
Yeah, but yeah. So I really appreciate that. There's things about this movie that I really appreciate, and that's one of them because here, he is the anti-hero or heroine, if you might, because you're in a way you're pulling for him to. Straighten up and fly right, and then you're also pulling for him to just lose his shit.
Yeah, I mean, if you're me, you really want him to go crazy because you want something to happen in this movie.
Yeah, no, it takes way too long for the first killing to happen. All right, we got to set up the story a little bit because we haven't really done our due diligence with the Meg Tilly character. So Mary Loomis. She's really Vera Miles' daughter. Vera Miles
she's Mary Samuel, as she's
right. What was Janet Leigh's character's sister in the original?
She's
Psycho.
The one who goes looking for her after Janet Leigh.
That's right.
Who is the one that's murdered in the
right.
shower.
She's the one who's a witness when they're dredging the lake and they pull the car out and she's standing there, and so. She's in cahoots with her daughter, played by Meg Tilly, who works at a diner. She's just gotten a job 4 days before Anthony Perkins, Norman Bates, arrives to take back his mother's hotel. He needs a job. He gets a job as a dishwasher, whatever.
A chef's helper.
He does anything he's asked.
I've known a lot of people who worked in the service industry.
Yeah.
And to my knowledge, that's not a position.
No, this is a position that was made just for the newly released from prison Norman Bates,
Yeah.
so that he can be helpful. He can
You-
be an
you
asset
get a
to
sense
society,
that it's-
and also so you can keep an eye on him.
You get a sense that it's a position in a restaurant that someone who like went to Dartmouth and have never worked blue collar work in their life just invents because they're trying to get their first screenplay made. Chef's helper. Anyway, so he's helping at the restaurant. He befriends, through what seems like accidental circumstances, this young girl who's having a fight with her boyfriend.
Who she's been living with for the past year or something.
Yeah, and through him, in what seems like a plot hole,
It's a rainy night.
slowly convincing her to stay with him, which you're a little creeped out
At the
about.
hotel, he can stay in a room
at
in the
the- yeah.
motel. He can stay in. She can stay in a room, but then they get there, and it turns out it's a crack den. So he
Yeah.
has to. The motel has been.
Well, why is it a crack den now?
Well, because he has this manager who's been running it like.
Dennis Franz.
That's right, Dennis, the one and only Dennis Franz.
He's okay. He's like the real highlight of this.
Oh,
movie.
he is. He's such a slimy devil.
And that got me into the movie, and I was excited for it because this is coming out in a very different era than the first one, and so when you're saying why why make a sequel to Psycho 20 years later? Well, maybe because we can catch up with society and see where we're at. And there's a bit of that, and it is
little bit.
inevitable,
Yeah.
but it's not. It's a little shoehorned in, but things are different now. Kids are making whoopee and doing in the pots.
in the fruit cellar of
yeah,
his house.
kids are sneaking in the building and
doing the nasty and
I
smoking
don't
pot.
remember what the sheriff calls hooking up, playing with each other. I forget.
I don't know. There's
Heavy petting.
But I also like how they talk about the proximity to Portland. You get, listeners, if you haven't read my review of Bates Motel series with Vera Farmiga and Freddie Highmore, I loved it. You can look in my article section and you can see
That's
my
a little background.
my review. But I love it because of the same reason. Some of the same reasons that I love this movie, because it really puts you in that atmosphere, and it's just such a cool construct with the way that Gothic house sits above the motel. There's just something really, you feel like that area and that house, and there's something very pleasingly familiar about the whole thing.
Well, so I mean, the first one, there is a bit of a story arc of Americana, is that motels, when there was not 5 interstates that connected the entire country, motels were more of a concept, and you were a bit more out into actual America in rural places. And so these would be places that would be owned by a single family who were a bit well-to-do because of it, and you had this very localized, sort of geographically specific flair. And then by the 80s, these are disappearing. There's a great documentary about motels, and I wish I knew the name, but look up motel documentary. There's a few of them, but one of my aunt's close friends actually made one, and just stopping by these is roughly the same era as this, maybe like 5-10 years after this movie was made. And
What year? 1989.
yeah, maybe around 89.
Is it called Motel?
I think so. Who's the director?
Christian Blackwood.
That's him. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a really cool documentary. One is about a woman who owns a completely abandoned motel. No one comes there, and she's painted this sort of room to be like an audience at a ballet, and she just performs ballet there to this painted audience every day at the same time. It's the creepiest, most amazing thing. But by this point, these motels are abandoned. They are places where people are just going to be doing drugs, and it's sort of it's no longer your middle class aspirational women who are embezzling from work, getting out of town.
Busty blondes with a stack of money hidden in the newspaper.
Yeah, you have your more seedy Dennis Franz of NYPD Blues running the place,
And we can see his death coming. I mean, we're looking around. We're looking for choices, and he could not be a more obvious pick. I'm just sorry. I like the special effects. This movie came out in 1983, and there are 2 very shocking scenes of violence involving a knife.
I like that they keep it with the knife.
Yeah, I like that too.
They know what they're working with.
Yep.
And they stick to it. It's like Fast and the Furious. They're not going to be flying planes.
Here's my problem is that they set you up by introducing the movie with the famous shower scene,
which is so like.
And
remember.
No, but that's the thing. But that's the thing.
Film.
But no, but if you're going to do that as a filmmaker, you just put a lot of weight on your shoulders because now you have to show us something better.
That's a great point.
And he had 2 opportunities to do it, and I say he should have done it with the first one, just because I think that what they did, I could be wrong, but I think that they measured this film against the original Psycho for when the first murder occurs. I believe that Dennis Franz is killed somewhere around the same third act part, maybe later than
it's
the
a
third
bit
act.
It's a bit heavy because we're like, do I really care about how this diner works?
Yeah,
like
and
there's a couple too many scenes of
right,
him
and this
screwing up at
this
work.
is a problem with the film is that you don't like, the writers needed to qualify the characters better so that the person who gets killed, the Dennis Franz character, like the Janet Leigh character, who's the first person that dies in Psycho, is somebody that you have empathy with. Somebody that they're a flawed person, but you empathize with. The Dennis Franz character, they don't give him. They could easily have given him a humanness, and it would have made it so much more interesting. Yeah, you would have made him so much more interesting if Norman were bullying him, and he was a really nice guy,
right,
trying to do the right thing.
I would like if Dennis Franz was doing a similar thing, but from this point of view of Norman. No one stays at these places anymore. There hasn't been anybody.
Right.
I'm trying to keep your family afloat.
Right. I'm trying to keep money in the bank.
It's like, do I want people doing drugs here? No.
Yeah, exactly.
But look, someone's got to do it. It's got to be us. And putting Norman in this like moral position and almost making him this like version of the patriarchy. But no, he's a bad guy, and so when he gets killed, you're like, fuck. Yeah.
Okay, well then, but see, all right, and then here's the other side of the coin, which is that you also have to pay off. Like, here's your chance. Now you have to do your modern version of the shower scene. This is your time. This is your moment in the song where you get to play the solo, and just doesn't happen. There's a nice little bit of tiny bit of special effects, and then it's over all too quick. Well, they needed to hold for another 2 seconds on that shot.
Yeah, and and they give us another shower scene, and the only difference is actual boobies on screen this time. Like that's what they throw out because it's what is it 83?
Yeah,
they need a little. They got a
hour and 53. I think
that's a chunky movie.
I really think though that I don't know if this will ever happen, if it ever could happen. It's sacrilege. I realize that to even say this.
Are you about to use the R word?
No.
Reboot?
No, I'm talking about taking a movie like this and properly editing it. I think that you could. I think that you could take this movie and edit it into a really great film.
Pulling an Alexander. You know what I'm talking about? It's Oliver Stone's Alexander.
Yeah.
His director's cut was 13 minutes shorter than the theatrical release. That's pretty rare for a director's cut to trim out an eighth of your film.
Interesting. So I do want to talk about Meg Tilly because I love Meg Tilly. Meg Tilly's awesome.
She's really great in this.
And she's Jennifer Tilly's sister. So if you feel like you're having deja vu,
yes,
when you see the Chucky movies, there's Jennifer Tilly, who's also beautiful.
Yeah.
I
was absolutely confused by that. I looked up Meg Tilly and I was like, she's not in Chucky. So I'm thinking of someone else entirely. But yeah, of course.
They're sisters. Of course, Meg Tilly had her breakout performance in the also 1983 film The Big Chill. Perhaps you've heard of it.
Oh, wow. She's in The Big Chill. She's someone's kid in it, obviously.
How funny is that? This movie and Psycho 2 and The Big Chill came out the same year with Meg Tilly in leading roles in both films.
Was she in a leading role in The Big Chill? Who's she in The Big Chill?
Do you remember her in The Big Chill?
I don't. I haven't seen The Big Chill in about 6 years.
Oh, maybe we
Probably
really.
longer. No, probably longer.
Yeah, that's not very long. She is. I would say of the characters in The Big Chill, she's maybe the most memorable.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's very memorable because she has this on-screen chemistry that is just so effortless, and I love.
Is she the same age as the other characters? I thought they were.
No, she's younger. She's
Right.
the younger girlfriend.
Because
of one of them.
it's Jeff Goldblum is in it.
Directed by Lawrence Kasdan.
Right.
Glenn Close. Yep. Jeff Goldblum. William Hurt. Kevin Kline. Mary
William
Kay Place.
Hurt is who I remember.
Yep. Joe Beth Williams.
I'm probably more familiar with the soundtrack of that movie. I had that on cassette tape. My parents had a cassette tape, and that's
nice.
That's a.
I used to have the
classic.
cassette soundtrack for Pretty in Pink.
That must be great.
That's a good soundtrack. It's got like The Time and Prince and all sorts of good shit.
So let me ask you about sequels, because we are in an era of sequels, but something I was thinking about while watching this is I think that the franchise and sequel culture that we're in now is actually a bit more respectful than this brand of sequel making. I think a movie like Psycho...
I call bullshit immediately.
Sure. But it's because
I'm just kidding.
But it also comes down to understanding what is the movie Psycho, because it is absolute. I think it's definitely thought of as canonical, a great film, and not on the level of like
conical.
Certainly, sorry, I say canonical, like in the canon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Certainly iconic.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's its like leading characteristic is iconic.
Well,
but
all right.
is it a type of film like is it a type of film like The Godfather, which itself had a sequel that it shouldn't have had? But
no, the sequel to The Godfather is good.
The third one. I meant.
Yeah,
the third one.
But this is
but this is a type of this is a specific type of sequel, which is very few, if any, people related to the original were involved.
Well, see, but you got Anthony Perkins, and this is what
but you don't have Alfred Hitchcock, is my point.
Well, of course, you don't have Alfred Hitchcock.
If this is very similar to the Jaws sequels, which don't have very irrelevant person.
Okay, we have to go back
to
to Psycho for a minute. We have to talk about Robert Bloch wrote the book, and it's one of those books. It's funny how it's written. If you read the Robert Bloch version of Psycho, it's a very similar reading experience to reading The Exorcist, where it's a little dry. Their sentences are kind of short, and it goes into just enough detail, but not quite as much detail as you want. And so
it's not to books. For one thing, it's not to books as the film is as the movie is the film, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't hold a similar cachet like The Godfather.
Let's just talk about Hitchcock. Hitchcock read this book and decided that he knew exactly what to do, and he was working at a time when he'd been working in television, and his last movie, I think it was Vertigo, that died a dog's death. Vertigo died. No one liked that movie when it came out. Everyone loves it now.
I didn't realize it was a
flop.
But
that movie flopped, and he'd been doing a lot of television, great television. And
Alfred Hitchcock
presents. Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, I love that show. And I was born in '63, so I remember that show, and that was one of the ways that I fell in love with Alfred Hitchcock before I ever saw The Birds or Psycho. So what Hitchcock did was he decided that he would use his television crew to shoot this little horror movie, this little knockoff horror movie that they were going to shoot in like over a few weekends. And I don't know how he got the set, but everything was done on a television budget, which was much, much smaller than on a feature budget.
At that point, we might be talking the hundreds of thousands.
And that also played into the choice to film it in black and white because it was cheaper. The stock is cheaper.
Yeah.
So,
do you know what year was this? Was this
60? I think it was 63. see.
So we're well into color film, and I think that's a thing that I forgot.
Let me double check that.
Because I imagined it.
Maybe 62.
That sounds about right. Thinking about how old my mom must have been. You know, we're well into the color film era.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
You still had some comedies coming out in black and
It was
white,
1960. Sorry, 1960.
Okay, all right.
1960.
You can still have comedy. Like I believe, like some Like It Hot might have been 58 or something. Like you still had some black and white stuff coming out.
So the thing about the movie was it was treated very ritualistically about, no one was let into the cinema after the thing began, and you weren't supposed to tell anyone about what happens in the movie
as just an audience member.
As an audience member, this is part of how Hitchcock beefed up the promotion for the film.
Did he have like a little a message
to the
audience?
Oh yeah, he had his little film trailer where he walked out with this big fat. Oh my God, it's amazing.
Keep for yourself.
Oh yeah. All of that. Yeah. All of that. Amazing. And so, it did something that no film had ever done. It also created the slasher genre. Psycho was the movie that created the slasher genre. That's the big thing. And the fact that Hitchcock waited until 40 minutes in to have that first killing and have that be the ostensible protagonist that vanishes. That was a groundbreaking thing, and I think that we're gonna talk about a similar attack in that vein with Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre. A similar one that we've already covered for Shocktober, though, is in the film that we did last week, The House of the Devil. Greta Gerwig, very unexpectedly at a very similar juncture, is murdered. She's not explicitly the protagonist; she's clearly the best friend character.
Yeah,
but
very empathetic, very empathetic,
and you certainly suspect from the arc that she will be around. And, like you could imagine her maybe being killed at the end, but the idea of her being taken out at that point is very shocking.
Really comes as a shock.
But of course, that movie came out 6 years ago, versus 1960. Very, very.
Well, here's what I have to say. I wish that Ty West had been the director on Psycho 2, because I think that's what was missing from Psycho 2 is somebody who's ready, willing, and able to go back and look at the original and see the corollaries to modern day filmmaking and compensate for those so that you get those, but you also get that modern effect, because that's what happens in The House of the Devil. Is Ty West is so able to brilliantly substitute these characters so that the Greta Gerwig character, the friend, is the one who gets killed the first time. It's funny. I think there's 2 murders in that one, and there's 2 murders in this one. Is that right?
I think there's more than 2 in this one, though, right? There's Dennis Franz. There's
Well, yeah, the little boy is weird. I don't know about the little boy. We don't get confirmation on the little boy. No, there's more. There's definitely more.
I was gonna say is strange about this movie is I don't know if I'd call it a slasher. You know what I would honestly call this movie is like a mystery movie almost. Like it's got the same number of deaths as like a Columbo episode. And it really is actually a mystery of who's doing it in like a almost like Scooby-Doo-ish way, because it's
bad. It's bad. It gets bad when there's eyes peeping through the eye holes and you don't know who they are.
Yeah,
that gets a little, and they don't bother to explain that. I think that the Robert Loggia character is pretty suspect. Because he always happens to be around. He just happens to be around when shit's happening.
No, I think they're setting them up. I mean, I haven't seen
but they
Psycho,
don't follow.
I haven't seen Psycho 3, which exists.
No. But see, you have to tell your story in one tale.
I will agree with that, but I will still say that they're heading for. As soon as you slap a 2 on something, you're into a franchise.
Well, since you brought it up, I'll have to look it up.
There were 4 of these, in fact. So, yeah, like I was saying, it's a bit more of a mystery than this, and
okay, I just have to tell you.
Yeah.
Psycho 3 came out 3 years later,
Mm-hmm.
directed by Anthony Perkins.
No, this was his Mission Impossible.
Norman Bates falls in love with a nun,
Oh God, it's
which makes his mother jealous.
so.
Who has visited the Bates Motel alongside a drifter and a curious reporter? Who?
So a problem with this, though,
Yeah.
I'll qualify it after I say it, is the first one is about the concept of a psycho, which at one point was a novel
Right.
word and a
Right.
novel concept
Yeah.
of a person who, what we say now has antisocial personality disorder and sadistic tendencies. And,
Like that guy in Las Vegas.
right. Someone who, though we don't know a lot about him, and I don't want to get that into it, but is
but
like,
seemingly somebody, and that
Right,
and,
so
and,
that's
and that's
seemingly
and that's also
normal.
there's also the lingo. Did you have did they have a nervous breakdown? Was it a psychotic breakdown? Right.
You want to.
So
I guess my point is like, yeah, we have an urge to distinguish them from a normal human being, and what made the first one interesting, right, is you had this character Norman Bates. He seemed normal, he seemed likable, but the truly scary thing is not just being afraid of taking showers, but being afraid of someone who seems nice.
well, and it also
But in this movie,
well,
I just want to finish my one thought. Is that you expand the sphere of people who could do this way beyond it, so it's no longer just like Norman breaks and he's bad now. It's like this lady at the diner who I guess this is maybe his mother.
Okay, right. And this is what we have to get into is the whole matriarchy part of this discussion, because we seem to have another movie in the queue called Mother.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the taboos that, the Psycho, the original Psycho is all about breaking taboos. It breaks the taboo of killing off the protagonist 40 minutes in.
Nudity.
It breaks the taboo of nudity. It breaks all of these social
Hyper-violence.
taboos, not the least of which is the American fixation on mother.
Mother being a pure, a positive, a nurturing person. And this
No matter, regardless, everybody, everybody gets a free pass once in a while, but you know who always gets a free pass is the mother.
Well, she's yeah. I don't.
And
Certainly
and there
wicked women.
and there's
portrayed
and there's
in
you know there's
film,
there's
but-
listen, I mean, you young guy, when you date a chick, they want to know about what you think of your mother, what's your relationship with your mother, and that's a bellwether. That's a
Right.
bellwether for the kind of person that you are.
You brought up Ed Gein, who had a very complicated relationship with his mother. There's certainly archetypical serial killer issues with mother. There's a type of serial killing which is called displacement killing, where you are working up. So what's kind of bad about Norman Bates, if you want to put into serial killer lore, is as a teenager, he killed his mother, or even younger. He's like 12, right? Is that something that we got from the first movie, that he had murdered his own mother? Is that canon, or did this movie invent that a bit? Do you remember?
About him killing his mother?
Yeah.
I don't know that we know that he killed his mother. He dug her up.
He tells Mary that he poisoned her.
In this movie.
In this
that's
movie.
right. Oh yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know if that's canon
no,
with the
no,
first
no.
movie.
That's new information.
Right. So there's the type of what are you just pulling up like spooky noises? All right, cool. Well, serial killer 101 theory, like real quick though, is you would think of Norman Bates as a displacement killer who is obsessed with murdering his own mother, and in like lieu of being able to really do that, is killing all of these women who become stand-ins for him. But his mother is actually already dead, so you gotta wonder like what is his motivation really? And I guess it's because he also has a schizophrenic issue where he imagines he's his mother and she's judging these people. So like that's his.
It's beautiful. It's so Freudian. It's got everything. I mean, that's the as from a sociological point of view, this the whole Psycho franchise is amazing.
The core of it is very.
It's very engaging.
There's something
engaging
that, on top of the iconicness, on top of the scandalousness, and that everyone had an experience with it. That's kind of Jaws-like. Like I would say, Psycho and Jaws.
Yeah.
Played really similar, really similar things.
For sure.
They started.
Yeah. Same thing. Same thing.
But additional to that, like what Jaws doesn't have is like a Freudian attachment to our psyche, and is really kind of getting.
Well, if it does, it's phallic.
Sure. Yeah. And this is.
I mean, this we get the phallic too with the knife.
Right. You have the phallic, but the feminine is perverted into like its exhibiting of its like penis envy through using.
Well, there's
violence.
that great shot in
right, because
in the House of the Devil where it's the silhouette and it's the girl and she's got the knife. Mm-hmm. It's one of those images that it's Godarian in its universality, because all you need. Godard was famous for saying all you need is a girl and a gun to make a movie.
Right.
I say all you need is a girl with a knife in silhouette.
Yeah. Well, so this is the most obvious. I almost don't even want to say this because this is the first thing that you write in your paper about the shower scene in Psycho, which I haven't thought that much about. But it's that Anthony Perkins wants to fuck Janet Leigh, right? And he has a taboo against trying to seduce her or actually do it. And so the closest he can come in a very sort of phallic stabbing way is to murder her,
right?
As his mother, the voice of saying,
who also has a phallic obsession and wants to penetrate young female flesh,
right?
Just saying,
it's a violence. And so Norman Bates, why is he such a big deal? He becomes the crystallization of the repression of sexual urges,
right? He becomes this poster boy for post-war Americana, where everyone's got their house and the car and the two dogs and whatever. This guy doesn't have that. And why? Right. Because his mom was a little incesty, mm-hmm. and he's damaged goods. He's damaged goods. Classic damaged goods.
And because he's so iconic of the 50s, the post-war era, I really wish this leaned even more into being the 80s. I wish this movie leaned more into the what's it mean that Dennis Franz is there. There's a line that I believe is a reference to Watergate. They can't avoid it when you're writing it. But the psychologist says, "I want you to tap their phones," and the sheriff says, "I can't do this. This is Mountain View, California, whatever, not Washington D.C." Well, that's a Watergate reference, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I wish there was even more of that they were conscious that Norman Bates is so tied up with this era. We're jumping 20 years. What does that mean?
Yeah. No, there's a lot more that they could have done with the movie, but I still go to my fallback position, which is that, listen, I know it's a balls out thing to say, but I could edit this movie into a decent film.
I'll download I'll give you my premiere. For a week.
Yeah,
I'll let you add it.
I think that I could edit this movie into a really good suspense thriller. I think there's some problems with the music. I think that I think there's problems with the pacing. I feel like there's times when how it is. If you're the director on the set, there's this scene of the guy Robert Loggia walking down the stairs. I remember thinking, what the fuck are you where are you going, man? What's your motivation? Get down the fucking stairs, asshole. That's direction. I think that this movie was under-directed. I think that what direction happened probably was from Perkins and Tilly, who obviously had a really clear handle on what they were doing, and they totally make this movie happen. I mean, there's no question about the fact that this movie would not work at all. Listen, I get it; it's a B- movie, but I still there's a lot that I like in this particular horror movie.
And you know why they made two more, and why Hollywood wouldn't give a fuck if this podcast could have existed and did exist in 1980 or whatever, because this movie cost $5 million to make, and I think it box office about 34 or 35 million.
Well, there you go.
So who gives a shit from that perspective if it's a little too long, and if Robert Loggia needed to walk down the steps a little less because
it made bread.
and it's an era.
It's a winner. This
of-
movie's a triumph.
It's coming out. It's
And Vera Miles gets axed in the mouth. She gets the knife in the mouth.
And
That is badass. I gotta say, that is badass. That's the payoff for the whole movie.
because this movie's being rebooted when you have 13 million Friday the 13th coming out and Nightmare on Elm Street. It's really being reborn into that era, and these movies always make money.
Yeah.
And they're the backbone of Shocktober. Maybe we won't cover them all, but
I don't know if they're.
that's
I
what
don't
this-
know if they're the backbone of Shocktober. That we won't. This isn't. We're only our.
they are not.
This is only our 6th installment in
I'm saying
Shocktober.
They are the compost of where the movies that we tend to more often cover like flower from. This is what horror films, slasher films are by and large. The meat and potatoes is these sequel. Maybe you didn't try that hard, but you sure as hell make money, and people go. People see them and they get freaked out because there's some creepy things in here. You got some kids fucking getting killed. What else you need?
Well, this is probably the first time that we've had a podcast where Mike. No, it's maybe the second time where Mike has really not liked the movie that I liked.
Yeah, I didn't love it.
Yeah, but that's okay because our next episode. You want to talk about our next episode, Mike?
Yeah, you don't know how I feel about it. I don't think I've told you.
You haven't told me anything. That's why I'm
I
asking
I
you.
haven't told you anything.
Yeah.
We're gonna be watching Mother! Which I have to say, what are you playing on YouTube right now? I don't know if it's coming up on Mike, but Cole's just playing like people giggling about to be murdered. Clearly,
It's Shocktober sound effects.
I'll say one thing I love about a movie is when it's got an exclamation point in the title. And do you remember the movie Marie Antoinette? Remember the
Sofia Coppola's
Sofia
movie?
Coppola.
Yeah. I hated that movie.
You hated it.
Yeah,
Most people hated it.
it's terrible.
Not great. Let me give one edit to it.
Okay.
Change the title.
Uh-huh.
Instead of Marie Antoinette,
Yeah.
Marie exclamation point. Better movie.
Better movie. Or just Antoinette exclamation point.
Whatever. I think
Yeah.
Marie. But
Marie.
yeah. But
Okay.
no, I mean Antoinette, maybe that's more.
Yeah.
But whatever.
Well,
'cause
it's good because at the end you get all those T's and the E and the exclamation point. It's messy.
Antoinette.
Antoinette.
Right? Because then that's a movie where you're expecting to see like Converses in the 18th century, right?
Yeah. No, that movie sucked. That movie blew.
So that I don't want to. So I'm just trying not to give anything away but my opinion about Mother. But I will say,
No.
go see it. I will say that. I will say, go spend your money and see it.
Shocktober. Thank you all for listening. Please remember to turn your cell phones off when you go to the movies, assholes. Thank you all very much for listening. I didn't really mean the asshole part. Unless you break out your phone.
Well,
and-
no, you are an asshole.
If you do that, then you are.
You are an asshole.
Okay. well.
But specific, if you're a listener, have your fun on the movie. You're an asshole. Otherwise, see you soon.